Good morning. This morning I'm giving you an update, overview on the industrial market. I'm going to be talking about sales, leasing, talk about the land market. I'll talk about what's driving the industrial market. I'll talk about trends, what's happening, latest trends in the market. And I'll talk about my outlook on the industrial market for the next 12, 18 months. But before I do that, I'd like to tell you a story. Warren Buffett. I'm guessing everyone in the room has heard of Warren, arguably the world's most successful investor of all time. Warren's net worth is $100 billion. He runs a company called Berkshire Hathaway. If you were to go out and buy one A-class share in Berkshire Hathaway today, it would set you back $718,000, one share. Very successful man, and like most successful people, he's a man of discipline and he's a man of determination and drive. And he's a man of routine. Every morning, he gets up and his wife gives him three amounts of money, $3, a $5 and a $7. Gives him the exact amount of money. He takes that money, he heads off to work, and he puts that money into 3 plastic cups in his car, and he sets off, and he goes to McDonald's for breakfast. He's got very poor eating habits. He eats a lot of fast food, drinks a lot of Coca-Cola, but he's 86 years old, and he's still going strong. He goes to McDonald's, and when he gets to the drive-through window, if the market is up, he buys the $7 breakfast. If the market is flat, he buys the $5 breakfast. And if the market is down, he buys the $3 breakfast. And when he gets to the office, on the walls around his office, there are framed headlines of newspapers, front pages. And those front pages detail every financial disaster that's happened in modern history. And he has them there to remind himself what can happen. The point of the story is, if Warren Buffett had have invested in industrial real estate for the past 2 years, he would have had the big breakfast every morning. Industrial market changed 2 years ago. Post-pandemic, the world changed. Worldwide industrial markets have been strong. The Perth industrial market has been strong. I'll talk about the leasing market. It's one of the greatest comeback stories in real estate history in Perth. For 10, 15 years, we had no rental growth in industrial. In the past 2 years, we've seen vacancy collapse to unprecedented record low levels. I've seen 2 reports, one citing vacancy at 0.2% and another citing vacancy at 0.8%. As I've got older, I've got very sceptical about statistics. So I, wherever possible, try to rely on real life case studies. And the best case study that I can relate to you is Realmark's very own property management portfolio. We manage 2,000 properties, 1,000 residential and 1,000 commercial industrial, heavily weighted towards industrial. 2.5 years ago, we had 200 properties vacant on our books. And that to me was reflective of where the market was. Vacancy was sitting around 20%. Times were tough. Last night, when I left the office, I checked. We had 3 industrial properties for lease, one with an offer to lease pending. So fundamentally, it's a full house in Perth, full house. As a consequence, rents have increased by a minimum of 30% over the past 2 years. Some tenants who were cut deals during COVID and given rent discounts are now staring down the barrel of 50% rent increases. What was $60 a metre is now $90. What was $90 a metre is now $115. Brand new concrete tilt panel space, 8 metre high, is going for about $125 to $130 per square metre. The highest rent I've heard of is 7,000 square metres in Gauge Circuit, Canning Vale, $140 per square metre. That's the highest warehouse rent I've heard of in my industrial career in Perth. Very strong market. The pre-lease market, very strong. Hesperia, all the major developers, Coxon Group, Hodgson Group, they've all had a great run with design and constructs for tenants. Jandakot Airport just completed a 20,000 square metre D&C for Amazon, and they've got another 50,000 square metres under construction. Perth has never been known for speculative development, whereby a developer goes out and builds on spec without any pre-commitment from a tenant. The market is so strong, I can rattle off 60,000 square metres of space currently under construction or about to start construction in Perth right now. Very strong market. The sales market, I'll talk about sales. When interest rate rises were first touted, and and the subsequent increases, we've had, I think, 6 or 7 or 8, I forget now, but in as many months. I actually saw it as a positive. Being a salesperson, you always look for the positive in anything, but I genuinely believe that the interest rate rises would create a bit of pain in the system and create more stock in what is a very tight market. I thought there'd be a bit of pain come through and sellers would decide to sell. Well, that hasn't happened. And I think there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason, I believe there's more headroom in Perth when it comes to interest rate rises. And if I can liken the industrial market to the residential market, because I think there's sort of some comparability there. When you look at Sydney, the average mortgage repayment in Sydney represents about 55% of the household income. That's about half over here in Perth. And I think that translates also to the industrial market. The Perth investor, the Perth owner-occupier, is nowhere as highly geared as they have to be over in the East Coast because obviously the land values and property values are so much higher over there. The second reason is, although yields have come out a little bit, and I'll come to yields in a second, although yields have moved a little bit, that has been compensated or overcompensated by this 30% rent increase. So you've got a situation where your cap rate has moved up slightly, but the value of your asset is increased because the rental income has increased. In the old days, when we're trying to sell a property, you try and sell it into the local market. If you couldn't succeed, you'd pick up the phone and you ring your contacts over east, try and sell it over there. Today, it's the reverse. You get something to sell now, one of the first calls you make is over east to one of your buyer network or to buyer's agents. We have buyer's agents ringing us every week, what have you got to sell? We've got buyers wanting to buy in Perth. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and these podcasts come out of Sydney and Melbourne, and all people want to talk about on these podcasts is buying industrial real estate in Perth. Complete change. And we're seeing activity from the top level right down to the smaller mum and dad investor. We've seen Dexus spend $1.1 billion buying Jandakot Airport. Centuria have taken out Prime West for $614 million. BGC has been sold to a company called 5 Capital. They bought all the BGC property. They're developing Canning Vale into a major industrial estate now. $208 million, I think they paid for all the BGC property. Unbelievable interest in Perth real estate, and I think it will continue. And what's driving? You say, what's driving this? Well, on the leasehold side of things, I call it the 4 Ps. The Perth, I'm going to get this right, Perth post-pandemic push. And fundamentally, companies and organisations have realised that they have to have a warehouse in Perth. We've all experienced supply chain problems, all of us, I bet everyone in the room, and they have now realised they have to have a warehouse in Perth to sidestep that problem in the future. Excuse me. And the other reason the other reason, the post-pandemic push with the sales. What's driving the sales? These big institutions and these mum and dad investors and these self-managed super funds from over east, they see value in Perth. They see Perth as being undervalued. We look at 140 a square metre in Canning Vale and go, oh, geez, that's getting up there. That's expensive. They look at 140 a square metre and say, wow, that's cheap. That's cheap. So it's just an incredible turnaround in the industrial market. Land sales are also very strong. Development WA, all their estates are selling out. They're filling up. Realmark were appointed by Development WA to sell an estate for them. Sold out. Sold every lot. The last lot settles in January next year. I just want to talk on some trends that are happening in the market. In the old days, there used to be a hierarchy of rents. You know, there'd be different sort of pecking order of suburbs, like Walshpur Kewdale was always 1, Canning Vale 2, Bat Balcatta 3, Malaga 4, I forget the exact order, but there was a distinct pecking order of rental values per suburb. Because the stock is so tight, the market is so tight, that rate is sort of blended out now, right across the market. Neerabup and Wangara might be a little bit cheaper, but as a general rule of thumb, it's the same rate per square metre over the entire market. And the other big trend and shift that we're seeing, which is very important, is we are seeing a changing of the guard in Perth. The Perth industrial market has been dominated in the past by high net worth individuals, developers, world-class developers. They develop industrial property as good as anyone else in the world, and they have dominated the market. We have seen with Dexus in Centuria and Charter Hall as well. Charter Hall, don't forget them. They built a portfolio of, I think, about 10 major properties here in Perth now. We've seen this institutional ownership increase in Perth over the last 2 to 3 years. And there's a shift. And because both owners behave completely differently. The high net worth is a long-term holder. They develop and they never sell, right? These guys, they deal in real estate. They continually trade in and trade out. They reweight their portfolio. The high net worth doesn't believe in rent-free periods, doesn't believe in giving away capital contribution. Why? Because it's his money. They would rather see their property sit vacant than let a tenant go in there and pay no rent. The institutional owner, they're more than happy to cut a deal. They're more than happy to give rent-free period. They're more than happy to give capital contribution. As long as they can maintain that base rent, they're happy to do a deal, because it's all about churn for them. It's all about building the portfolio. It's all about being remunerated on the number of deals that they can do. And we're going to see a major shift in the market. That institutional ownership will increase and they will become the dominant player in the Perth market, and it will behave differently. And we will see a lot more transactions, big scale transactions, properties being sold in the Perth market as before than we have ever seen before. And we at Realmark, we have to tap into that. My outlook for the future, it's obviously pretty strong. We've got a strong economy. It's underpinned by, I think, $11.7 billion worth of infrastructure in the Perth, Peel regions, which the state government is embarking on. The resources sector is strong. Iron ore price is hovering around $100 a metre, and the forecast is good. The forecast for the oil and gas is also good, so I can see that the economy will keep ticking along quite nicely. I think we'll see further growth in our rents. I didn't mention yields. Yields have come out a little bit. What was 5.5 is now 6. What was 6 is now 6.5, and what was 6.5 is now 7. So there's been a slight upward lift in the yields. But I think they'll hold. I think yields will stay fast where they are. I think the vacancy will come off. when all this design and construct and all this spec building is done, I think the vacancy will increase a little bit, and sales and land sales will continue to be strong because we're still seen to be a very cheap option compared to the Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane markets. So just in closing, if Warren Buffett elects to choose industrial real estate for the next 12, 18 months, 2 years, he'll be having the big breakfast every morning. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Thank you to the API for inviting me to speak, and I'm happy to take questions later on. Thank you.